This is the second part of our decimal lesson, decimals in the hundredths. I'm continuing with talking about decimals in the hundredths place. What we see here on our screen are grids with 100 spaces on them, so they represent 100 equal pieces, hence the name hundredths. All right, so what we're going to do is we are going to shade and write some decimals and some fractions. Okay, so we're going to start out with 1/100th, 1/100th, which is equivalent to its decimal. Now, you have to be very careful here. You have to put the 1 in the hundredths place. What does the 0 represent? This 0 right here. That 0 is 0/10ths. There are no tenths. In order for there to be a tenth, you'd have to have 10 pieces colored in. We only have 1 out of 100 colored in. So the 1 falls into the hundredths place. Decimals are all about making sure that the number is in the right place value. All right, so what do you think is next? If you guess 2/100ths, you're right. All right, so here's what I want you to do. You should already have paper and pencil out. I want you writing these fractions in decimals so that you are ready to talk about them when we meet in class. So you are writing the fraction and the equivalent decimal. All right, so what's our equivalent decimal? How do we write it? This 0 stands for 0 wholes. I put my decimal. That 0 stands for 0/10ths. And then I have my 2. 0 and 2/100ths. I want you to say it to yourself. 0 and 2/100ths. All right. And if you want to make a prediction of what's next, you're probably going to predict that 3/100ths is next. Write the equivalent decimal. Your goal is to write it before I write it. Be faster than Miss Mendez. That 0 stands for what? 0 wholes. I have 0/10ths and I have 3/100ths. All right, if you make a prediction that the next one is going to be 4/100ths, you are so smart. It is 4/100ths. 4/100ths. Write the decimal before Miss Mendez does. Write the decimal before Miss Mendez. I have nothing, no holes. And I have 4/100ths. All right, what's the next one? If you guessed 5, you are super smart. 5/100ths. 5/100ths. All right, what's our decimal? Write it before Miss Mendez. 0 and 5/100ths. Very good. Nothing in the tenths place, nothing in the wholes. All right, what's our next one? 6/100ths. So I would shade 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I would write my equivalent decimal. Write it before Miss Mendez. It's a race. Write it before Miss Mendez. All right. If you think you can write the other ones, then go on. Write them and then check back with me and see if I'm doing the same thing. Okay, I'm shading 7. in my decimal is 0 and 7 hundredths. It is very important, boys and girls, that you are practicing saying these decimals. I would go through every one. I would start up here, 0 and 1 hundredths, 0 and 2 hundredths, and say each one. All right? What do we have next? 8 hundredths. I hope that when we meet in class, I hope I can call on some people and they can show me their work, that they've been following along with me. They've been writing everything that I'm writing. I hope that happens. I would be so proud of you. It would make me so happy and smile that you're not just sitting there. All right, what's next? 9 hundredths. Guess what? You're 1 square away from having a whole column filled in. Okay, when you get a whole column filled in, something important is going to happen. All right, now, our next one is we're going to fill in 10. Okay, and something interesting is going to happen when you fill in 10. Okay, so the whole column is filled in. The whole entire column. What's going to happen when the whole entire column is filled in? Well, it's going to change place values because now you have 1/10 now. You have one of these columns out of 10 of the columns. There's 10 columns on here. One of the columns out of 10 is shaded in. So now the 1 moves into the 10ths place. You can put a 0 behind it. You can say that it's 0 and 10 hundredths, or you could take that 0 off. And you could say that it was 0 and 1/10, because guess what? They're equivalent. Okay? That's a very important concept that we have to understand. Okay? 1/10 equals 10 hundredths. They're equivalent on the grid. How are they equivalent on the grid? Because I could either look at it as having 10 individual squares shaded in, which would be 10 hundredths, or I could look at it as having 1 column out of 10 shaded in. Either way. So that means that they're equal. You could cross multiply them if you wanted to, and it's going to prove that they are equivalent. Okay. All right, so let's look at now what it would look like. What would 32 hundredths look like? Now, what I want you to notice is we have nothing in the wholes place. There's no whole grid shaded, so we have a 0 in the hundredths place. Here's our decimal. Now, these 3 in the tenths place, they represent 3/10. 1, 2, 3. 3 columns are shaded in. That's why there's a 3 in the tenths place. 3 out of 10 columns are shaded in. 3/10. Now, what does our 2 represent? Our 2 represents 2 individual blocks shaded in. 2 hundredths. All right, so what I want you to do now is I want you to pause the video. And what I want you to do is I want you to write the fraction as a decimal and use the place value chart to help you. Okay, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll do the first one for you. So on this one we have no wholes and we have 67 hundredths. Why is there 6/10? Because I would have 6 columns shaded in. And again, this pen is not good for doing that. Not at all. I would have 6 columns shaded in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I would have 6 columns shaded in, and then I would have 7 individual blocks shaded in. Okay, so you have 3 to do. Write it in your paper. Be ready to share when we meet in class. Pause the video, because when you're done these, you need to pause the video here. You have more to practice. Okay, notice these over here have whole numbers written in front of them. This says 3 and 84 hundredths. So I put my 3 in the ones place. 84 hundredths. Pause the video and write these in your math notebook or your paper pad, whatever you've been using to do your math. All right, see you guys in class.